4:47 a.m. on February 10, 1945, Captain Louis Edward Kurd spotted a C-47 transport turning toward a Japanese airfield on Baton Island. The 25-year-old pilot had 10 confirmed kills across 2 theaters, but he had never faced a decision like this. 12 Americans sat aboard that transport, 2 of them nurses, heading straight into Japanese hands with no radio to warn them. The C-47 had launched from Lingayen Gulf 30 minutes earlier, its mission simple: rescue Lieutenant Lacroix, shot down over the water near Baton. The transport crew had spotted Lacroix's life raft, circled once, and then the pilot began his approach, but he was lining up for the wrong island. Baton had 2 airstrips. The Americans controlled the southern strip, the Japanese held the northern one. From 3,000 feet, they looked identical, both carved into volcanic rock, both running east to west. The C-47 crew aimed for the northern strip, with no way of knowing their error. Their radio had failed over the water. Kurtz flew his P-51 Mustang closer. He could see Japanese trucks moving on the northern airstrip, anti-aircraft positions dug into the hillside, and 4 fighters parked on the taxiway. The transport kept descending, 500 feet now. The landing gear dropped. By February 1945, the Pacific War had grown brutal in ways the European theater never matched. Japanese forces executed captured aircrews at a rate of 37%. In the Philippines, that figure climbed to 52%. Female prisoners faced worse. 2 American nurses captured at Luzon in January had been bayoneted within 48 hours, and the Japanese command on Baton followed the same protocols. The C-47's pilot began his final approach, 300 feet. The runway stretched ahead, flat volcanic rock with tire marks still visible from Japanese bombers. Kurtz checked his fuel. 18 minutes left, not enough to escort the transport back to Lingayen and land himself. He tried his radio again. Static. The transport crew could not hear him. He dropped to 500 feet and flew directly across the C-47's nose. The transport kept coming. He climbed and dove again, crossing their path a second time. No response. The crew assumed he was providing escort and waved from the cockpit window. One of the nurses aboard that C-47 was Second Lieutenant Helen Warner. Kurtz had taken her to dinner in Lingayen the night before. They had talked until 2300 hours. She had mentioned her transfer orders, 2 more weeks in the Philippines, then reassignment to Guam. Now she sat in a canvas seat, unaware her transport was seconds from landing in enemy territory. The C-47 dropped to 200 feet. Japanese soldiers gathered at the strip's edge. Kurds counted 15 men. Some carried stretchers, others held rifles. They were prepared for prisoners. Would Helen and the 11 others survive? Please hit the like button. It helps more people discover these stories. Subscribe for more. Back to Kurds. Kurds armed his guns. He had one option left. The C-47 was 70 seconds from touchdown. His hands moved to the firing controls as he lined up behind the transport's left engine. Standard gunnery training taught pilots to aim for the fuselage, maximum damage, quick kills, but Kurds needed something different. He needed the C-47 to crash without killing everyone inside. He had to shoot down an American plane to save American lives. Kurds had fired his guns in combat 34 times across 2 years, in the Mediterranean and Pacific theaters. He knew what .50 caliber rounds did to aircraft. 6 Browning M2 machine guns were mounted in his Mustang's wings, each firing 800 rounds per minute. At 200 yards, those rounds punched through aluminum like paper. The C-47 was built tough. Douglas designed it to absorb damage, but that strength came from redundancy, not armor. 2 Pratt & Whitney engines, dual hydraulic systems, multiple fuel tanks, knock out one system and the others kept working. That was what kept transports flying through flak over Europe, but Kurds did not want it to keep flying. He needed both engines dead, fast. The left engine sat 18 feet from the fuselage. Hit it wrong and fragments would tear through the passenger cabin. 12 people sat behind that thin aluminum skin. Kurds had to place his rounds precisely, engine cowling only. Miss by 2 feet and he would kill everyone he was trying to save. He positioned his P-51 400 yards behind the C-47. The transport was at 150 feet now, 45 seconds from touchdown. Japanese anti-aircraft crews tracked both planes but held their fire. They wanted prisoners, not wreckage. Kurds checked his gun sight. The C-47's left engine filled the reticle. He adjusted for deflection. The transport was moving at 110 miles per hour. His Mustang flew at 180. He needed to lead the target by 3 aircraft lengths. His thumb pressed the firing button. 6 streams of tracers arced forward. The sound hammered through his cockpit, a mechanical roar that drowned out his engine, as spent casings ejected from the wings. 400 rounds in 3 seconds. The C-47's left engine erupted in black smoke. Oil sprayed across the cowling. The propeller seized and stopped. The transport lurched right as asymmetric thrust yanked it off course. The pilot fought the controls, but the C-47 kept descending. One engine was enough to fly. Douglas had tested it. Single-engine operations were standard procedure for damaged transports. The pilot adjusted trim, compensated for the dead engine. The runway was still ahead, 30 seconds out. Kurds banked hard and came around for a second pass. The C-47 was at 75 feet, too low for the crew to bail out, too high to survive a crash on land. He had one more chance. He lined up on the right engine. The transport was slower now, 90 miles per hour with one engine out, an easier target, a harder decision. Kill the second engine and the C-47 would drop. No power, no altitude. The crew would have seconds to find water. Baton's coastline ran along the airstrip's western edge. Kurds could see waves breaking on volcanic rock, rough water with 6-foot swells. A ditching in those conditions could tear the aircraft apart, but it was better than landing among Japanese soldiers. The C-47 crossed the beach, 20 seconds from the runway. Kurds pressed the trigger again. His remaining ammunition, roughly 800 rounds, converged on the right engine. Tracers walked up the cowling. Metal peeled away. The engine coughed once and died. Both propellers were stopped now. The C-47 had no power. The pilot pushed the nose down to gain airspeed and maintain control. The transport dropped toward the water and hit the sea at 11:03 a.m. The pilot held the nose up until the last second. The tail struck first, then the fuselage slammed down flat. Water exploded around the aircraft. The impact hurled everyone forward against their restraints. Metal groaned, rivets popped, but the fuselage held together. Water poured through gaps in the hull. The C-47 began sinking immediately. Douglas had designed the aircraft for land operations, not water landings, no watertight compartments, no flotation gear. The crew had maybe 3 minutes before it went under. Kurds circled overhead and watched 12 figures scramble out through the emergency exits. They jumped into the water. Some inflated life vests, others grabbed floating debris. The C-47's wings kept it afloat briefly, creating a temporary platform where the survivors gathered. Lieutenant Lacroix was still in the water 400 yards away. He had watched the entire sequence from his life raft, the P-51 shooting down the C-47, the controlled ditching, the scramble for survival. Now he had company. Kurds checked his fuel gauge, 6 minutes of flight time remaining, not enough to reach Lingayen. He would have to ditch as well, but first he needed to mark the survivors' position. Japanese patrol boats operated near Baton and could reach the crash site within 30 minutes. American rescue boats were 60 miles south. He dropped to 50 feet, flew over the survivors, counted heads, 12, all accounted for. Helen Warner waved from the wing. She still did not know why her transport had crashed. The crew probably believed they had suffered engine failure. They would learn the truth later. Kurds climbed back to 500 feet and transmitted on the emergency frequency. There was no guarantee anyone heard him. His radio had been unreliable all morning, but he sent the coordinates anyway. Baton Island, Western Shore, 12 survivors in the water. His fuel warning light came on. 3 minutes left. He needed to find his own landing spot. The ocean east of Baton looked calmer, smaller swells, better chance of a controlled ditching. He turned away from the crash site. The P-51 Mustang was not designed for water landings. The liquid-cooled engine sat low in the nose. Hit the water wrong and the engine would act like an anchor, flipping the aircraft. Kurds had seen it happen during training. Pilots who survived the ditching drowned when their planes went inverted. He ran through the emergency procedures. Canopy open. Harness loose, radio destroyed. The last item was standard protocol. Military radios contained encryption equipment. Better to destroy it than let enemy capture it. Kurds flew east. He passed over Lakewa's position. The lieutenant was paddling his raft toward the C-47 survivors. Smart move. Strength in numbers. Kurds waggled his wings. Lakewa waved back. 2 minutes of fuel remaining. Curtis found his spot. A stretch of open water between Bayan and the next island. No reefs visible, no Japanese patrol boats. He set up his approach, reduced power, dropped his flaps. The Mustang slowed to 120 miles per hour. He held the nose high. The tail struck first, just like the C-47, but the Mustang weighed half as much. It skipped once, twice, then the nose dropped. Water hit the propeller. The blades shattered. The engine torqued hard. The entire aircraft pitched forward. Kairos released his harness. He pushed himself up, grabbed the canopy rail. The cockpit was flooding. Cold cedar rushed past his knees. The Mustang's nose was already underwater. The tail lifted. The aircraft was going vertical. He had seconds to get clear before it pulled. him down. Kurds kicked away from the sinking Mustang. The aircraft's tail rose above him. Water pulled at his flight suit. His boots felt like anchors. He kicked them off, swam hard. 20 feet 30. He turned to look back. The P-51 slid beneath the surface, nose first. The tail vanished last. Air bubbles marked where it went down. Then nothing, just waves. Kurds inflated his life vest, started swimming toward the C-47 survivors. They were 600 yards away. The water temperature was 78 degrees, warm enough to avoid hypothermia, cold enough to sap strength over hours. Kurds was in good shape. He trained for water survival at Luke Field back in Arizona, but training pools didn't have 6 feet. Swells, each wave lifted him up, then dropped him into a trough where he couldn't see anything. He swam for 20 minutes. His arms burned. His flight suit soaked up water like a sponge. Added 30 pounds of dead weight. He considered removing it, but the suit provided protection from sun and jellyfish. He kept swimming. At 11:37 a.m., he reached the C-47. The aircraft had settled lower in the water. Only the wings remained above the surface. The fuselage was completely submerged. The 12 survivors sat on the left wing. They'd organized themselves efficiently. The strongest swimmers positioned at the edges, ready to help anyone who fell in. The 2 nurses sat in the middle surrounded by crew. Helen Warner recognized him immediately. She grabbed his hand, pulled him onto the wing, asked what happened. Curtis explained the wrong airfield. The Japanese troops his decision to shoot. The C-47 crew understood immediately. Their pilot, a lieutenant whose name was Richards, checked his map. He'd made the navigation error, mixed up the 2 air strips. The radio failure had prevented ground control from warning them. Kurds had saved their lives by destroying their aircraft. Lieutenant Lackroy reached the wing 10 minutes later. He'd paddled his raft across 400 yards of open ocean. Now all 13 survivors sat together. They had no food, no fresh water, no radio. The C-47 was sinking. They needed rescue within 6 hours. Kurds looked toward Baton's northern shore. He could see the Japanese airfield. Trucks moved along the runway. The enemy knew about the ditching. They'd watched it happen. Patrol boats would be launching soon. The Pacific Theater rescue system worked on a simple principle. Submarines patrolled near enemy territory. Surface vessels stayed back at friendly bases. When a pilot went down, submarines responded first. They were faster, harder to detect, and carried enough firepower to fight their way out if necessary. But submarine rescues took time. The nearest boat was USS Palmerd, operating 60 miles southeast of Baton. Even at maximum speed, she'd need 3 hours to reach the survivors. 3 hours exposed on a sinking aircraft wing. 3 hours for Japanese patrol boats to find them first. Kurds organized the group. He told them to stay low, minimize silhouettes, watch for Japanese boats. If they saw one approaching, everyone would slide into the water, hide under the wing. Japanese patrols typically didn't search thoroughly. They expected survivors to be visible, waving for help. Hidden survivors often went undetected. The C-47's left wing dipped lower. Water sloshed across the aluminum surface. The aircraft was settling faster now. Air trapped inside the fuselage was escaping through gaps in the hull. Basic physics. As air left, water entered. The wing wouldn't stay afloat much longer. At noon, someone spotted movement on the northern horizon. A vessel, small, fast, heading their way. The vessel was 3 miles out. Kurd squinted against the sun glare. He couldn't identify it yet. Too much heat shimmer. Could be American. Could be Japanese. The survivors watched in silence. Richards pulled out a signal mirror from his survival kit. Standard issue for all aircrew. 3 inches diameter, polished steel. He angled it toward the approaching boat, flashed 3 times, waited, no response. Japanese patrol boats in the Philippines operated under strict radio discipline. They maintained silence to avoid American direction finding equipment. American rescue boats did the opposite. They broadcast continuously, advertising their position to guide survivors. The silent vessel suggested Japanese Kurds made the decision. Everyone into the water now. The 13 survivors slipped off the wing. They positioned themselves along the submerged fuselage, held onto any handhold they could find, stayed low. Only their heads above water. The C-47's wing provided cover from one direction, but the approaching vessel would circle. Standard search pattern. The survivors would be visible from certain angles. They needed the wing to block the sight line at the critical moment. The boat closed to 2 miles. Curtis could see its profile now. Low freeboard, single mast. Diesel engine by the sound. Japanese Type A patrol boat armed with 120mm cannon and 2 machine guns. Crew of 8. These boats specialized in picking up downed aircrews for interrogation. The patrol boat slowed at 1 mile. It began circling the crash site. Wide circles first, then tighter. The crew was scanning the water, looking for survivors. The C-47's tail section remained visible above the surface. Obvious crash site. Fresh. The Japanese knew people had walked away from this. Kurds watched through a gap in the wing structure. The patrol boat completed its first circle. No sign they'd spotted anyone, but the circles were getting tighter. The next pass would bring them within 300 yards, close enough to see heads. In the water, Helen Warner floated next to Curtis. She'd removed her flight jacket, let it sink, reduced her profile. Smart thinking. The other nurse had done the same. The crew followed their example. Less visible material above water. The patrol boat's second circle brought it to 400 yards. Japanese sailors lined the rails. They had binoculars. They were searching methodically, sector by sector. The boat's captain had done this before. He knew how to find survivors. Lieutenant Lacroix still had his life raft. He deflated it partially, pushed it under the wing, kept it hidden. That raft was their backup plan. If the Japanese left without finding them, they could re-inflate it, use it to stay afloat after the C-47 sank completely. The patrol boat turned for its third circle. This pass would bring it directly alongside the wing. The survivors pressed against the fuselage, tried to merge with the wreckage. Curtis could hear the diesel engine clearly now. A deep rumble maybe 200 yards away. The Japanese crew called to each other. Kurds didn't speak Japanese, but he recognized the tone. Confusion. They'd found the crash site. They could see the aircraft was recent, maybe 30 minutes old, but no survivors, no bodies, nothing. The patrol boat idled at 150 yards, dead stop. The captain was thinking, trying to solve the puzzle. Downed aircraft, empty water. The math didn't work. Someone had survived this crash. He was certain. The question was where. One of the Japanese sailors pointed at the wing. He'd seen something. Movement or a reflection or a shape that didn't match the aircraft's outline. The patrol boat's engine revved. It turned toward the survivors' position. The patrol boat moved closer, 100 yards now. Kiss could see individual sailors on deck. 3 of them aimed rifles at the water. They were ready to fire on sight. Standard procedure. Japanese forces treated swimming survivors as active combatants. No surrender from the water. The captain shouted orders. The boat circled the wing one more time, slower. Methodical. 50 yards out, the sailors scanned every meter of water. They looked for debris patterns, oil slicks, anything that indicated recent human activity. Kurds forced himself to breathe slowly, quiet, small bubbles only. He trained for this at survival school. Captured aircrew had reported that Japanese searchers listened for breathing sounds. Heavy breathing, carried across water, got people killed. The patrol boat completed its circle, stopped again. The captain climbed onto the bow. He studied the C-47's tail section, checked his watch. Curtis could see him calculating time since crash, drift patterns, survival probability. The math suggested survivors were close, but the captain had a problem. His orders were to capture aircrew for interrogation, not waste time on empty crash sites. He'd already spent 15 minutes searching, found nothing. Other patrol boats were operating nearby. They had their own sectors to cover. He needed to make a decision. The diesel engine rumbled. The patrol boat began moving north back toward Baton. The captain had given up. Kurds watched it pull away. 100 yards, 200, 500. The
boat's profile shrank against the horizon.
The survivors stayed hidden for another 10 minutes.
They waited until the patrol boat disappeared completely.
Then they climbed back onto the wing.
Everyone accounted for. No one injured, no one spotted.
Richards checked his waterproof watch.
12:17 p.m. They'd been in the water for 74 minutes.
The C-47 had maybe 30 minutes of flotation left.
The fuselage was almost completely submerged now.
Just the wings and tail remained above surface.
Kurds looked south. No sign of American rescue boats yet.
His emergency transmission had
given their coordinates, but had anyone received it?
His radio had been malfunctioning all morning. The message
might have been pure static.
The Pacific Rescue System depended on radio communication.
Submarines monitored emergency frequencies continuously.
Surface vessels did the same.
Patrol aircraft listened while flying search patterns,
but all of it required clear transmissions.
Static didn't save lives. At 12:41 p.m., LaCroix spotted something. A periscope 400 yards southeast. Breaking the surface for 3 seconds, then gone. He pointed. The others saw it, too. Submarine. American. Or Japanese. Impossible to tell from a periscope alone.
Both navies operated submarines near the Philippines.
Japanese boats hunted American shipping. American boats hunted everything. But American submarines had specific orders regarding aircrew rescue. Find them. Surface. Retrieve them. Japanese submarines had different orders. Submerge. Report position. Let patrol boats handle capture. The periscope appeared again, closer, 300 yards, still on course toward the survivors. It stayed up longer this time, 5 seconds.
The submarine was making an observation run, checking for enemy vessels, confirming survivors' position.
Standard procedure. Before surfacing, Kurds made a decision.
He grabbed the signal mirror from Richards, aimed it at the periscope,
flashed the emergency code. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. International. Distress signal recognized by all nations. The periscope disappeared. 30 seconds passed. Nothing. The survivors watched the water, searched for any sign of movement. The submarine could be anywhere.
Submerged boats were invisible, silent, deadly.
Then the water erupted 200 yards away. A submarine's conning tower broke the surface. Water cascaded off the hull. The bow appeared. Then the deck. The entire boat surfaced. In 40 seconds, USS Pomfret, fleet submarine, 300 feet long, 80 crew. She'd been hunting Japanese shipping when she received Kurdi's emergency transmission. Pomfret's captain was Commander Maurice Ferrara.
He'd commanded the boat for 8 months, completed 4 war patrols, sunk
11 Japanese vessels, rescued 6 downed aircrew.
Now he was adding 13 more to
that list. The submarine's deck crew appeared immediately. They carried lines, life rings, rope ladders. They'd practiced this procedure dozens of times. Speed mattered. Every minute on the surface was a minute exposed to Japanese patrol boats and aircraft. Ferrara wanted everyone aboard in under 10 minutes. The survivors swam toward Pomfret. The strongest swimmers went first. They grabbed the lines. Deck crew hauled them up one by one. The 2 nurses came next. Helen Warner climbed the rope ladder without assistance.
She trained for water survival at Camp Legion.
The second nurse needed help. A
sailor descended the ladder, pulled her up manually.
Kurds went last. He counted heads as each survivor reached the deck. 12 from the C-47. LaCroix himself. 14 total. Everyone accounted for. He,
12:53 p.m. climbed aboard 60 seconds later.
Pomfret's deck was already clearing.
The crew moved the survivors below immediately down the conning tower hatch, through the control room into the forward torpedo room. Submariners had converted it into a temporary medical
station. Blankets, hot coffee, first aid supplies. A pharmacist may check each survivor. Minor injuries only. Cuts from torn metal. Bruises from the ditching. Impact. Mild dehydration. Nothing serious.
The C-47's controlled water
landing had worked.
No broken bones, no internal injuries.
Ferrara's luck was holding. The captain interviewed Curtis in the control room. He needed details for his patrol report.
Time of ditching, position, reason for shootdown, number of
Survivors. Curtis explained the entire sequence. Wrong airfield. Japanese troops waiting. The decision to fire. Ferrara listened, took notes, asked no questions about the decision itself. Rescuing downed aircrew was the mission. How they got down didn't matter.
At 13:08 p.m., Palm's radar operator reported surface contact.
Range
8 miles, bearing north, speed 12 knots.
Japanese patrol boat, possibly the same
vessel that had searched earlier. It was returning to the crash site.
Ferrara ordered dive stations. The klaxon sounded twice. Deck crew scrambled below. The hatch clanged shut. Vents opened. Seawater flooded the ballast tanks. Pump Red began her descent. 30 seconds from surface to periscope depth. 2 minutes to full submersion. At 100 feet the submarine slipped beneath the waves.
The survivors felt the descent. A subtle pressure change, deck angle shifting. Forward.
They were safe now. Japanese patrol boats carried depth
charges, but they needed to know where to drop them.
Pump Red could be anywhere within a 3 m radius. Finding her would take hours. Ferrara kept the boat at 100 feet silent running, minimum engine noise.
He wanted distance from the crash site before surfacing again.
Japanese patrol patterns were predictable. They searched in expanding circles. Pommard needed to be outside that circle before dark. At 1,500 hours, Ferrara surfaced. No contacts on radar. No aircraft overhead. He set a course for Subi Bay. 240 miles south, 14 hours at cruising speed. The survivors would reach friendly territory by dawn.
Kurd sat in the forward torpedo room, Helen Warner seated across from him. She had changed into dry clothes borrowed from the submarine's crew, standard Navy dungarees hanging loose, too large by 3 sizes. She asked him about the decision, why he had fired, whether he had hesitated. Kurds told her the truth. He had not hesitated. The mission was simple: shoot down the C-47 or watch 12 Americans fall into captivity. There had been no alternative. But now he faced a different problem.
He had destroyed an American aircraft, shot down his own side, and that action would demand explanation.
Pomfret reached Subi Bay at 0600 hours on February 11. The survivors disembarked.
Medical staff examined them again and cleared everyone for duty.
No serious injuries, no lasting trauma, just another rescue in a war filled with rescues.
Kurds, however, faced questions. His commanding officer, Major Vincent Elliott, wanted details.
Kurds had destroyed an American C-47, and that required justification, written reports, witness statements, approval through the chain of command.
Kurds filed his report on February 12, 4 pages, single-spaced.
He detailed the navigation error, the failed radio, the Japanese troops waiting on the airfield, his decision to fire, the controlled ditching, and the submarine rescue. He included statements from Richards, Lacroix, and both nurses.
Elliott forwarded the report to 5th Air Force Headquarters.
They reviewed it for 3 days, checked the facts, interviewed the survivors, and confirmed the Japanese presence on Baton's northern airfield.
Everything aligned with Kurds' account.
On February 16, 5th Air Force issued its decision.
Kurds' actions were justified, necessary, and heroic. He was credited with saving 12 American lives. But a bureaucratic dilemma remained. How do you record this in official documents?
Standard kill markings used enemy symbols, German crosses, Japanese rising suns, Italian fasces. Kurds had shot down aircraft from all 3 Axis powers, but he had also shot down an American plane.
5th Air Force chose to make it official.
They authorized an American flag kill marking on his P-51. Kurds painted it himself, a small American flag on the fuselage of his replacement Mustang, placed alongside his German, Italian, and Japanese kills, the only such marking in American military history, a symbol of the hardest decision he had ever made.
The C-47 crew returned to duty within a week. Richards flew transport missions until the war ended.
Lacroix recovered his original P-38.
Both nurses completed their tours in the Philippines. Helen Warner married Kurds on June 3, 1945.
They had been dating for 4 months, and the shootdown had drawn them closer.
Kurds flew 43 more combat missions after Baton.
He survived the war, returned to the United States in October 1945, and left the Army Air Force in 1946.
He and Helen settled in California and raised 3 children. He never spoke publicly about the shootdown until 1989.
The Navy credited Pomfret with 13 aircrew rescues during her 5th war patrol.
Ferraro received a commendation.
The submarine completed 3 more patrols before the war ended. She was decommissioned in 1946 and sold for scrap in 1947.
Kurds died on February 5, 1995.
he was 75 years old. His final tally, 7 German aircraft, 1 Italian, 1 Japanese, 1 American, stood as the most unusual kill record of World War II.
If Louis Kurd's story moved you, hit that like button right now.
It tells YouTube to share this with more people who need to hear it. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this.
We share forgotten heroes every single day.
Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from: United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, or anywhere else in the world.
Our community spans every continent. You are part of keeping these memories alive. Did your grandfather or grandmother serve in World War II? Let me know your family's connection to this history. Thank you for watching.
Louis Kurds deserves to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.